Belegar's campaign has gone from being one of the most difficult and frustrating to possibly being the most powerful dwarf start, especially when it comes to confederating the other dwarf lords. Mostly the Mad here, and today I've got a video focusing on the early turns of the Clan Angrund campaign, how to unlock the Master Rune of Spite on turn 2, occupy Skavenblight by turn 8, farm Oathgold fast to gear out your heroes as invincible tanks, then back up those tanky ghost heroes with an invisible sniper army. At the end, I'll also cover a pretty dirty exploit for those who are interested. At the start of a Belegar campaign, the first choice you have to make is whether you're going to go the Herohammer route or whether you're going to rush Carrick Apex to get rid of the crippling upkeep penalty. In this guide, we're going to focus first on powering up Belegar's heroes. The most powerful early game boost to Belegar's hero stack is the Master Rune of Spite. You can get one later in the game from Belegar's unique grudge once you've defeated Skarsnik's armies 5 times, but I'm going to show you a much quicker way to unlock it. First, join your runesmith and one of your thanes into Belegar's army. Then, move the other thane and the engineer as close as possible to Carrick Bufftar. Use underway stance to jump Belegar straight over. Start building the landmark Copper Mountain straight away and demolish the barracks. Your runesmith will have 3 points to spend. Put 2 into scouting for item drop chance and 1 into Rune of Wrath and Ruin. Before you end turn, start researching the +1 public order tech. In this playthrough, we're going to focus first on the diplomacy techs. Over the end turn, the Broken Nose Orcs will attack Belegar. You have to fight the battle manually and then retreat all Belegar's forces off the field. You can't just retreat initially when the Orcs first attack you. You have to actually enter the manual battle and then retreat manually from the battlefield. This shameful defeat will cause a grudge to be issued. Add your 2 ghost heroes back into Belegar's army and then take swift vengeance on the Groby scum. You can auto-resolve this battle and then occupy Carrick Bufftar and claim your 30 Oathgold reward. If you're lucky, about 50% of the time you'll loot a magic item from this battle. If you unequip the item and melt it down, you'll actually get enough Oathgold to forge your Master Rune of Spite straight away on turn 2. Equip this to Belegar, and with his natural tankiness, he can just stand in a massive blob of infantry and the AoE damage will slowly melt everything within a 40-meter radius. Build the Dwarf Beer Building in Carrick Izor and recruit a second Lord from Carrick Bufftar. Build the Woodsman's Hut for the recruitment cost reduction for Rangers. Next turn, move Belegar down towards Zarekzil, but stay within your borders so you get replenishment. Your other Lord has taken the Slayer Oath, so move him as far as you can in force march towards a good death in Zarekzil. Keep leveling Rune of Wrath and Ruin so you can reduce the cooldown and drop more Wrath bombs on the enemy infantry in battle. Gotrek and Felix are about to spawn next turn, so recruit another Lord before the end turn so that next turn he can recruit Gotrek. Once you've got Gotrek, just disband the extra Lord and start bringing Gotrek and Felix down south. Move Belegar forward just enough so that he can reach Zarekzil next turn and put him in ambush stance. Then take our sacrificial Slayer Lord and, still in march stance, move him to just about this spot. If this Broken Nose hero is too close, it might foil your ambush, so you might have to move Belegar just a little bit further away from that hero. The Broken Nose will give your sacrificial Slayer Lord the peace he yearns for, and that will create another grudge. However, the grudge kind of hasn't spawned yet, so you need to wait until your turn before you kill them. Just decline the attack or retreat if necessary to avoid fighting them until your turn. This part is quite tricky. If you get forced into a battle with them, you can get into a position where you end up with a grudge that you can't solve because the enemy's already dead before you get the grudge. If they force march into your ambush, make sure you decline the attack. They can't attack in force march. If they do actually attack you, fight the battle manually and make sure you don't wipe them out. Let them escape so that you can fight them again next turn and get the grudge. If all goes well, Belegar will be in a perfect position to avenge the grudge and take Zarekzil in the same turn. But it's all auto-resolved, so if disaster does strike, you can always just restart. If the Greenskins have built a barracks, you can recruit 3 or 4 units of Dwarf Warriors or Dwarf Miners, or you can just not recruit anything at this point and save some money. Demolish the Refectory and march Gotrek and Felix down south. Taking Zarekzil will open up a trade route to the border princes, who can give you pottery, which you'll need to forge the Ironwarden's tankard. Orion is another possible source of pottery, so take an aggression pact and try to build up your relations with him in case you need his pottery later. If neither Orion or the border princes have pottery in your game, you can check your forge to see where the closest source of pottery is. If you don't already have it, completing the second grudge should give you enough Oathgold to inscribe the Master Rune of Spite. If you got lucky with the items and you've already got your Master Rune of Spite, then I'd recommend next taking either the Rune of Luck or the Rune of Fear. So you can put this on 3 different heroes for a total -9 to local enemy leadership, which will help rout cowardly foes like Greenskins and Ratmen. If you still want to rush Carrick Apex, this is not a bad point to turn east. It's still fairly early, only turn 6, but you've at least consolidated your home province. For this guide though, go into force march and move as fast as possible towards Skavenblight. Demolish the barracks at Zarekzil and build a ranger outpost. Travel by underway closer to Skavenblight. Put Gotrek and Felix on the north side. It's important that you've got Belegar in position and ready to attack on turn 8. For some reason, Ikit Claw always seems to move his army away from Skavenblight over to Tobaro on turn 8. So if you're ready on this exact turn, then you can attack Skavenblight when there's only one army there. Put Gotrek into encamp stance for a little extra melee defense and move Felix into Belegar's army before attacking Skavenblight. The Skaven defenders do have a nuke, so if you're going to use your infantry, be very careful about clumping them up, as a nuke could take out your whole army. Just to be safe, I'm going to retreat all of my infantry at the start of the battle and just use my heroes and rangers. Even though they're stalking, your rangers can still be targeted by menace below, but hopefully if they're far enough back, they'll target the heroes. Withdraw your infantry as soon as the battle starts. Gotrek will be coming on as reinforcements, don't forget to bring him into the battle. And then just charge. The Skaven missiles are so weak, don't even bother evading them. Just charge straight for the gate. Try to ignore any menace belows and keep running for the gate. Remember, the engineer is a ranged attacker, so you have to use alt-click to force him to melee the gate, otherwise he'll lag behind. Bump your heroes and fight in the gatehouse. Don't bother using Rune of Wrath and Ruin yet, because if you made it to the gate in time, the Skaven will almost always drop a nuke directly on the gatehouse. With your vulnerable infantry retreated off the battlefield, your heroes will generally take almost no damage from the nuke at all. The nuke will, however, completely destroy the gate and kill any Skaven units nearby. As you dive into the Skaven horde, Belegar's Master Rune of Spite will start sapping the health of all of the Skaven nearby. Use the Runesmith's Rune of Wrath and Ruin whenever it's off cooldown for AoE damage on the blob. The Skaven have very little armor piercing, so from here it's just a matter of grinding them down. The Runesmith might need a little bit of babysitting, but as long as the heroes stay together, basically they're invincible. Once you've beaten the snot out of the pathetic Thagoroki infantry clustered around the gate, move into the city square where most of their missile troops will be huddled. Because the enemy missile troops are in skirmish mode by default, they'll just run away and you can just herd them right off the edge of the map. One more Wrath and Ruin for good luck. Quick note about Ikit Claw's nukes. While generally devastating to infantry, they won't usually do any significant damage to single entities like heroes. However, within the larger AoE of the nuke, there's a tiny central AoE that does absolutely huge damage, and a direct hit will delete any unit in the game. Every time I tested this battle, none of my heroes took any significant damage, but in one of my tests, this happened. The nukes landed directly on both Belegar and one of my Thanes, instantly killing both of them. Belegar's heroes are so powerful, I was still able to win the battle even without Belegar and his Rune of Spite and one of the Thanes, relying mainly on the Runesmith's Rune of Wrath and Ruin, but a direct hit like that is pretty unusual, so you shouldn't find this battle too difficult. Although I'm not going to cover taking Carrick 8 peaks until later in the video, if you did want to rush Carrick 8 peaks right at the start of the game, these are the exact same techniques you would use. Casting Wrath and Ruin over and over again to wear down the enemy units, and fighting in and just outside the gate so that you can minimize the amount of damage that your heroes take, while keeping Belegar in melee combat so that you can keep your Rune of Spite AoE damage active. Choose Loot and Occupy. We want to lower the public order to force a rebellion as soon as possible, and the extra money will come in handy. Losing Gotrek at this point would be a real setback for a legendary campaign, so if you want to play it super safe, keep him behind Skavenblight, protected from any potential Ikit Claw ambush attack. We're going to play it a bit more aggressive. Move him as close as you can to Tobaro while keeping him still within Belegar's reinforcement range, and put Gotrek into ambush stance. If Ikit Claw has an army outside of Tobaro, use Gotrek to attack the army, fight the battle manually, and then immediately retreat Gotrek off the battlefield. This will give you another defeat grudge that'll allow you to earn an extra 30 oath gold. Don't attack the Lord directly, he'll just flee. Instead, attack Tobaro and auto-resolve the battle to wipe him out and Ikit Claw. Sack Tobaro and claim another 30 oath gold for a grudge fulfilled. Next turn, if there's a Skaven Lord outside the settlement, you can do the same thing again. Make sure Belegar is not in range to reinforce, and then attack the Skaven Lord with Gotrek, enter the battle manually, and then retreat again to get another grudge. To claim a little extra oath gold, attack the Lord first. If he runs away, that's fine, you'll have enough movement to chase him down, but if he stands and fights, make sure that you kill him in the battle. Use Execute and Loot for 10 oath gold, in addition to the 30 for resolving the grudge. It's turn 10, which is the very earliest turn that it's possible for Ogre Camps to spawn. If the camp doesn't spawn when you sack Tobaro, attack Tobaro again and just choose Do Nothing. From this position, it shouldn't cost Belegar any movement, so you can just keep attacking Tobaro over and over again and keep choosing Do Nothing until the Ogre Camp spawns so you can get access to their Mournfang cavalry. Now you need to move Belegar to a precise spot on the map. There's a chaos symbol here and some spikes. You want to be just below those. You don't want Belegar's zone of control to completely cover Tobaro. You want it to just be covering the center of Tobaro. Once you finish researching the Dwarf Emissaries tech, start working towards High King's authority. If you want to supercharge your research rate and unlock these technologies faster, you can also check out my Dwarf Followers guide and a bunch of guides for other legendary lords. Over the end turn, a rebel army will spawn in Skavenblight, and Clan Scryer will recruit a new lord. If you place Belegar correctly, the new lord won't be able to enter Tobaro. This is better for Oathgold farming, as you don't get any Oathgold for sacking settlements. You'll get a Crush the Uprising grudge, and if you're lucky, you'll get a second grudge to raid Skaven territory. Kill the Scryer lord for another 10 Oathgold. As soon as Ikit Claw is defeated, you can take Belegar back up north. In this guide, I wanted to show off Oathgold farming with 2 lords first, but that's done, so Belegar can go now. Head up and support Gotrek to defeat the rebels, and then transfer all of the infantry into Gotrek's army. Belegar won't need them. Skavenblight is not a particularly valuable territory for the dwarfs because it's a single region province. You can't really build up growth, and you're never going to be able to develop it. The real strategic advantage to taking Skavenblight early is just to eliminate Ikit Claw. If you do want to expand down this way, then you could take over Miragliano and start your own dwarven trading empire using your enhanced diplomacy techs, but I'm just going to leave a Gotrek here to farm Oathgold and followers for a few turns. Just make sure Ikit Claw's faction's completely eliminated before you abandon the province. You're probably wondering why I didn't disband the Hammerers to save upkeep costs, because Hammerers are badass. I'm never disbanding my Hammerers. Wait a minute, 480 per turn? What the? Consolidate Gotrek's infantry. 5 or 6 dwarf miners should be enough for him to handle the rebellions, but if you leave Ikit Claw alive, you might want to give him a stronger force to help him keep the Skaven in check. I use Gotrek's army to kill the rebels and fulfill the grudge, so we don't waste Belegar's movement. Then just force march Gotrek back so he's in position to attack Tobaro next turn. Underway stance will give Belegar the most movement in this situation. Move him back up towards Karak Izor to deal with the coming rebellion. Force march Belegar further north. If you have the money, recruit a lord at Karak Izor and start recruiting rangers Belegar's army. Now the plus 30 relations from dwarven diplomats and dwarven emissaries should have kicked in, and you'll be able to start collecting dwarf tax from all of your friendly neighbors. Get as much money as you can, selling non-aggression packs and military access to all of your neighbors, and make sure you get as many trade agreements as possible. At this point, I'd actually look to eliminate Ikit Claw. It's actually more profitable in Oathgold to run 2 rebellions in both Tobaro and Skavenblight. So just loot and occupy Tobaro. Move Gotrek back out of the settlement to recruit some more miners. This is probably just being overly cautious. Once you've got a handle on the 2 rebellions and you've got a good idea of how many troops you need, you can probably reduce your forces and save upkeep. The regular grudge rewards will help offset the cost. It's not really necessary, but I'm going to bully Clan Spittle and Sack City Fester Spike for a few levels. Move Belegar into position to reinforce. Hopefully you'll be able to underway over to Fester Spike next turn if you're close enough. Oof, rough order as well for the Rangers. I recommend you fight that one manually. Realistically though, it's turn 14 now, and you're probably finding that your game's starting to diverge slightly from mine. Different random things happen in their campaign, and no campaign plays out exactly the same. At this point, this is probably becoming less of a step-by-step guide and more of a general strategy and concepts to help you with your campaign. Transfer the Rangers into Belegar's army, disband the extra lords so you can get rid of the supply lines penalty. Recruit 4 more Rangers. Around this time, King Lun should be hitting level 12. Use the Wanderer skill. This will give all of your Rangers the snipe ability to keep firing while remaining invisible. It also gives King Lun Stalk, so he won't be spotted until he gets close. I actually recommend you don't give Stalk to the other Thane. Halkenaf Stonebeard is the tankier of the 2 with very high melee defense, so you actually want him to get a bit of attention as he'll be able to tank the enemies quite well. I'd actually give Stalk to the Engineer, who can also get it in his skill tree. In a few moments, I'll get into exactly how to use the Stalk and Snipe units in a battle. Now that you've taken all of Clan Scryo's settlements, their AI should change to be like rebels, so they'll no longer retreat from battle and you can wipe them out. Hopefully, you can completely eliminate Ikit's faction this turn. Then you'll be free to just concentrate on the rebellions next turn. Try to prioritize wiping out the rebellions in one turn as soon as they spawn. You can potentially get 2 battles and get 10 Oathgold after each one, as well as getting the 30 Oathgold for fulfilling the grudge, for 50 total Oathgold in one turn. If you kill them in one turn, you'll also get a new rebellion faster. Remember to grab the ogres before they disappear, but just keep them in the pool. There's no need to recruit them into your army yet. Technically, we could jump over to Fester Spike this turn, take them out, and then use global recruitment to finish off our ranger stack later, but since our rangers are so damaged, I'll play it safe and recruit for an extra turn. Belegar has a point to spend, but I'm going to save it until he gets to level 12 so I can take 2 of his level 12 skills at once. Next turn, Belegar jumps over over to Festus Spike. You can demolish the ranger building as you're not recruiting any more rangers. Running rebellions in both Tobaro and Skavenblight can get a bit hectic. Here I'm going to have to recruit all of the ogres and regiments of renown to be able to take out this army. If it becomes a bit too much, you can always just write off Tobaro and just farm the rebellions in Skavenblight only. Along with the garrison and walls if necessary, a minimal force should be able to defend Skavenblight. Or as I said before, you can just completely abandon Skavenblight after you've eliminated Ikit Claw and forget about farming the extra oath gold altogether. This is not necessarily the optimal min-maxing path to take, but I just wanted to show off this alternate Herohammer method of playing Belegar, where you focus on farming oath gold and gearing and leveling up your heroes in the early game instead of conquering. As soon as Belegar hits level 12, we'll take Rally the Holes, gives us plus 40 relations with all dwarfs, in addition to the plus 30 that we're getting from our tech tree. Also take Ancestral Guidance. It's going to give us 10% physical resistance to the whole army, plus allow us to recruit 2 Thanes. Try out the Snipe Ranger army on Clan Spittle. Belegar needs a few levels anyway. The army's not yet at full strength, but this is good enough to give you an idea of how it works. Thanks to Vasily for sharing this battlefield formation with me. First, you want to set up a back line of rangers, organized into 2 wings, angled slightly so they have an overlapping field of fire. Alkanaf, Stonebeard, and Belegar will be your main tanks. Put them way out the front, maybe even just outside of the range of your rangers, along with Felix. These 3 units at the front should be the only units that are actually visible to the enemy on the whole battlefield. Runesmith doesn't have Stalk either, but he's not strong enough to be a main tank. I'll put him in the forest where he's hidden. In the second row, I've got a Ghost Thane and a Ghost Engineer. Both of them have Stalk, so they won't draw aggro off the main tanks initially, but they can collect anything that gets past the front line. Note the Engineer does not have Snipe, so we disable fire at will so he doesn't give away his position early. The tanks essentially hold forever, and the Rangers only have to deal with units that lose aggro on the tanks. Although you will face stronger enemies, once you get your Ghost Heroes physical resist from 85% up to the cap of 90% and generation from Ironwarden's Tankards, they'll get a lot tougher. The Rangers also can be upgraded to Bugman's Rangers that regenerate, although standard Rangers are more cost effective for the early game. Hunter Warfare and Tactician in Belegar's tree will also further buff your rangers. Thanks to Ancestral Guidance, you can now recruit Thanes anywhere. Recruit 3 Thanes at Karak Izor. These will be your ambassadors to the world of elves, dwarves, and men. Send 1 to discover Angrund, then you can tour the Empire collecting Dwarf Tax. You can send the other 2 to Bretonia and Uthwan, or you can send 1 down to discover Thorek. You can also send your Rune Priest even earlier if you want. Because of the Dwarf Emissaries tech, most factions will be willing to give you hundreds of gold straight away for military access and non-aggression packs when you first meet them. If you establish diplomatic relations early, you can keep going back and asking for more money every few turns as well. If you're willing to completely abandon your starting province, this is another point when you could turn towards Karak 8 Peaks. This army should be able to capture it easily. But at this point, I prefer to hunt Skarsnik and wait for Thorgrim to get beaten down a bit by Grimgor and his other enemies. If you do decide to go after Skarsnik early, just be aware it's going to take at least 6 turns for Belegar to get over there, defeat Skarsnik, and get back to Karak Izor. Even more if you want to farm Skarsnik for the 5 battles that you need for your Master Rune of Spite grudge. If and when you do decide to go after Skarsnik, occupy Festus Spike and eliminate the Skaven there, whilst also giving yourself some extra replenishment. If you confederate Karak Norn on turn 19 or 20, then after 5 turn cooldown, you can potentially confederate Angrund, and then another 5 turn cooldown, and you'll be ready to potentially confederate Thorgrim around turn 31. Taking a defensive alliance will give you an instant boost to relations, which is really useful if you're just short of the 75 relations that you generally need to get a confederation. It will also allow you to get replenishment as you're moving through Karak Norn's lands. Now, going after Skarsnik can be a bit tricky. At this point, you might be getting armies from the Crooked Moon mutinous Gits coming over and be threatening Karak Izor. If you've already abandoned Oathgold Farming in Skavenblight, then you will have Gotrek available to sort of stay here and be a cheap defender for Karak Izor. You can potentially bring Belegar back to defend, but that's going to delay eliminating Skarsnik by another 2 turns. Leaving Karak Izor undefended isn't really that much of a risk, as you can most likely confederate or conquer a tier 3 settlement later when you move east, so you won't have really lost too much if you do end up losing it. However, dwarves are really good in defensive sieges if you fight them out manually, particularly if you recruit an emergency lord and some regiments of renown just before you get attacked. It's up to you how you handle Skarsnik. I prefer to beeline to his home random region of Karak Asgaraz. Eliminate that first. That way he'll switch to the dumber no regions rebel type AI and also potentially be taking attrition. Then come back and clean up his armies later on, even if that risks him taking out some of my settlements. When Skarsnik comes for you, generally around turn 20, he'll usually come either through Wissenland or through Knifear territory. You may not have complete vision over those territories, but as long as you can see at least one settlement, you can use diplomacy to actually see if Skarsnik's trespassing on that faction. Choose Skarsnik in the diplomacy screen and then mouse over the little colored public order face on one of the faction's regions. Trespassing gives a -10 penalty per turn per army. So it looks like Skarsnik's trespassed 4 times on Wissenland. So even if we couldn't see his army here, we'd know that probably one or more of his armies was in Wissenland. With a quick check of his other neighbors, we can confirm he hasn't trespassed anywhere else. You can try to intercept Skarsnik's armies or sort of defend your settlements and wait for him to come to you, but I find this can really turn into a game of whack-a-mole that lasts forever, and it's much better in my opinion to just go straight to Karak Asgaraz, take that out, even if in the meantime you lose Karak Norn or even Karak Izor, certainly Festa Spike, that's fine. Just work your way back towards Karak Izor, taking out all Skarsnik's forces along the way until you've eliminated him, making sure that you finish the grudge to get your free Master Rune of Spite along the way. You can see in this example, it gets pretty messy, but it all works out in the end. Because of all the positive relations from Belegar's skills and your technologies, Angrund will usually be willing to confederate straight away when you meet him. You will probably need at least 75 relations though. Angrund doesn't bring much to your faction, but he's very strong in battle, and you can annex his lands or just sell his buildings for extra cash. Head over towards Karak 8 Peaks and Karazakarak around turn 27-28. Orgrim may be willing to confederate as soon as you meet him, but do not confederate him before turn 31. If you do, you'll never be able to recruit Grombrindal. All of the 2 Lord factions, Thorgrim and Grombrindal, Vlad and Isabella, Karlfrans and Volkmar, they don't get their second Lord until turn 31, so if you confederate them before that, you'll never be able to get the other Lord. Just wait until turn 31, then when you confederate Thorgrim, you'll get Grombrindal as well. In this campaign, I also located Thorek on turn 30. Because Thorgrim's in a relatively safe position, I decided to confederate Thorek first. Just like the other legendary lords, he's quite easy to confederate due to the diplomacy technologies and Belegar's unique skill. You just need to make contact and confederate the other legendary lords before they get wiped out. By now, Gotrek has fulfilled a lot of grudges and made a lot of oath gold. We can also break down any inferior magical items to get even more oath gold. Obviously, you can spend your oath gold as you make it in the early game to get powerful items for your heroes, but I didn't really need the items yet, and I wanted to save it up so we could do a bit of a shopping spree before we attack Karak 8 Peaks. We now have enough to get Ironwarden's Tankards for Belegar and all of the Ghost Heroes. While in Belegar's army, the Ghost Heroes have 85% physical resist. They only need 5% more to get to the cap. Luckily, I'd already picked up a bunch of ward save and physical resist items, but I just needed one more 5% physical resist for my 4th Ghost Hero. These heroes aren't anything like maxed out, but with 90% physical resist and Ironwarden's Tankard for regeneration, they should be able to take on pretty much anything you can encounter this early in the game, including Karak 8 Peaks. In fact, Belegar can probably solo most armies himself with the Rune of Spite. Later on, you can completely max out the heroes with purple unique items from the Forge. Late game Belegar can become an absolute walking tank. This Belegar has Isabella's regeneration trait, over 8,000 health, 200 armor, making him completely immune to non-armor piercing damage, 108 melee defense without his buffs on, and 67% physical resistance without equipping the Sword of Cain. That is a proper dwarf. But that's way more than you need to take Karak 8 Peaks. At turn 30-ish, if you follow this kind of strategy, with the Rune of Spite plus the Runesmith's Rune of Wrath and Ruin, some Rangers, and a couple of Ironwarden's Tankards for your main tanks, should be able to easily take Karak 8 Peaks. There used to be a special reward for taking over Karak 8 Peaks. That doesn't seem to be in the game at the moment. I'm not sure if it's a bug or not, but you will settle the greatest of grudges and remove the upkeep penalty, which will fix your economy, which is enough of a reward in itself. From here, all I had to do was wait a couple of turns for the Confederation cooldown to be over, and then I confederated Thorgrim and Grombrindal no problem. Won't necessarily play out exactly like this in every campaign, but there's a couple of things to consider. I intentionally didn't go east to help Thorgrim against the Orcs until later in the game, so that it's more likely that Thorgrim will be under threat and therefore more likely to confederate when I meet him. That, combined with the high base dwarf relations from Belegar's skill and the tech tree, means that you'll generally have a fairly easy time to confederate Thorgrim. I'm not saying it'll play out as easily as this in every single campaign, but generally you will find it is fairly easy. And if you don't get the confederation straight away, if you can at least keep the dwarfs alive long enough, they'll generally confederate later. You can also fight, raid, and do do agent actions against Thorgrim's enemies to get some extra relations if you need it. Before I go, I'll quickly show you this dirty little trick that you can use for emergency defensive situations. First, you'll need to recruit a lord and then go into the forge and craft him a ranger's brooch. If possible, you'll also want 1 or 2 units to help distract the enemy. Units that can stalk like rangers would be ideal. If you can't recruit rangers, just recruit some miners or just whatever you can get from your regiments of renown. Now you're ready to use a sort of stalk intercept trap on enemies. From the campaign map, under options and campaign settings, you can change the battle timer to 20 minutes. Then use the underway stance to move near the enemy army. When you're underway near an enemy army, there's a chance that they'll intercept you. However, it's not guaranteed. So this is more of a last-ditch Hail Mary type defensive measure. If they don't intercept you, then it won't work and you're dead. If you're happy to save scum, then you can guarantee the intercept using the diplomacy method of save scumming. Check out this video if you want to know how to do that. Once you go into the underway battle, you want to let the enemy see you on one side of the map so that they're drawn towards you. If you only have a lord, you have to try and move close and then try and run away, but it's much easier if you have a unit to distract them onto one side while your lord hides on the other side of the map as far away as possible. But once the visible units are all dead and the enemy doesn't know where you are, they'll start sending out units to sort of search for you. You'll have to be a bit clever and a bit lucky to evade their search parties. If you have a unit of rangers as well as the initial distraction unit, then you can use them to have a sort of second line of defense to distract them if their search parties get too close. If the lord you're using is particularly tanky, you can always just tank the enemy army until the timer runs out as well. You just need to use whatever method you can to survive until the timer runs out and the battle ends. When the battle time's out, the attacker loses, and since it's an underway interception battle, the loser gets wiped out even if they're the attacker. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. It can be pretty hard to evade the enemy armies. If the enemy army is too large or they have too many sort of scouting units going everywhere, it can be nearly impossible. Be aware also that lizardmen units can see twice as far as other armies. However, again, if you're willing to save scum and redo the battle over and over, it becomes quite a lot more reliable. I did say this was a pretty dirty exploit. Anyway, that's all I got for now. Hope you liked the video. If you know anyone who's struggling with Belegar and maybe needs some help, please point them in the direction of this video. I'd also like to thank a bunch of people, but I'll do that in the description down below. Thanks, guys.